see some head nods. All right, so it's 4:05, so I'm just gonna get things started here. Hello, my name is Deborah Olatunji, and I'm so glad that you're joining this session and are doing this summit today. It's been a really interesting and fun experience, and I hope that you guys, enjoyed the first hour of this and are ready to really transform education. So my summit, my presentation is called Learning That Looks Like You, How to Be Seen in Education. And so the entire inspiration behind this presentation is making sure that the education that we return to in the fall and the education that we are currently going through right now is more representative of the kids that are in the classroom. What I mean by that are, the different voices, the different ideas, the different races, the different cultures. We want to make sure that those are really represented in our curriculums and the way that we are teaching students. So I'm going to go into my education origin story a little bit before I kick off the presentation here. And I think that this perspective is important, especially when we're talking from education reform to education transformation. And so I've been to 3 different kinds of schools. When I was from preschool to the 4th grade, I went to a private school where I really learned about the importance of student-centered learning because there were not many of us. I remember my 4th grade class when we had 6 students. And so it was a real space to get in turn with the different students in the classroom as well as the teacher. And this was entirely different from the 4 years that I went through when I went from the 4th grade to middle school, 5th grade and middle school, where it was an entirely different atmosphere. It was a public school. There were people with different beliefs from me, and as a 9-year-old, this was new, and it was a new experience because all my life I had people who they thought the same as me. Some of them looked the same as me, and going to a new school where there was entirely, for the most part, Black and Latino students from all over Delaware, it was different for me. And so I'm from Delaware. I'm a high school senior, but I'm an incoming freshman at the University of Pennsylvania. And so most of the experiences that I've had have centered around small classrooms. And when I got to public school, it was like my eyes were completely open because I met people from all over the state of Delaware, and it definitely changed. And then for my high school experience, I went to a public charter school, and this was even more different because it was a STEM specialized program, and these were students who were really driven, they were really motivated. It was different from the widespread other experiences that I had passed, and it was new and it was different. And I'm really glad that I had those because having those 3 experiences helped me determine what I think is the important step that we need to take in order to go forward in education. But it also showed me that because there were so many different perspectives, that my perspective alone isn't the only thing that we need to transform education. We need everyone's different stories, whether they went to one school growing up or whether they went to 5 different schools. We need all of those perspectives together so we can create an education where everyone feels seen rather than just one person. And I'm also very multidimensional. So I'm an author, I'm a poet, and a public speaker. In fact, I wrote a book. It's called Unleashing Your Innovative Genius, School Redesigned. And it was a place where I was able to really dive deep into what education needs to look like so that when I'm 10 years down the line in like 2030, the education system looks very different from how it looks right now. That was the main goal of writing the book and helping to empower students, educators, and their teachers to learning how to do that. And you can check that out later, but I'm going to be referencing a lot of the stories in this presentation from the book, so that's just for a reference point. And then I have a lot of interest, I'm interested in music, writing, poetry, sports, activism, and all of these interests were really important for me because they're spaces where collaboration and connection are really encouraged. And I think that when you're in an environment where you're focused on working together as opposed to just being one entity, you learn so much more about how you can help to empower others and help them to reach their potential while going as well. One phrase that we always say in my house is lifting while you climb. That's something that we definitely need to keep doing in education, and it's something that hasn't been happening as frequently as I would hope. And at my core, I'm an igniter. I ignite people to reach their potential, to empower others, and to collaborate so that we can all create a definition that ultimately empowers people in education and helps them see how different education needs to be. So here are some of the goals that we have for this webinar, and I really like outlining them because I feel like it helps people get a sense of place and direction, which is something that is really important for education right now. But we're going to define some of the things that are happening in our current culture, and I think for this session, I'm going to allow people to turn on their mics or raise their hands to answer so that it feels more interactive. And then we're going to identify the purpose for the transformation that we need. I think that we can all agree that there are things that need to change, but we need to identify why that's important. And then the last piece, of course, is taking action on the idea so that we have a new way forward at the end of this hour and understand how to work together and work towards making an education system that makes everyone feel seen. All right, so let's talk about it. I'm going to allow people to raise their hands, and then you can unmute yourself as we go here. But I want you to describe your education experience in 3 words. And I'll give you a minute because for me it didn't come really quickly. I had to take a minute to really ruminate on the different experiences that I've had. But before I share my 3 words, I really want to hear from maybe 2 or 3 people about what their education experience is in 3 words. And once you have kind of an idea of what your 3 words are, feel free to raise your hand. You can go ahead, Maya and Jeannie. Maya, you can go first.
Okay. So for me, my education was bumpy, fun, and also explorative. If that's a word. I don't think explorative is a word, but we're going with it.
No, you can use it. All right, Jeannie, you can go.
Okay, so my 3 words are engineered. This is a dual word: subversive, iconoclastic, and capacity building.
Okay. Does anyone else want to share? And if you don't know how to raise your hand, you can go ahead and speak.
This is a great question.
Do you want to share your words?
I did mine.
Oh no, but yes. All right, so we're going to continue then. For me, my 3 words for when I describe education was one-sided, intriguing, and intensive. And actually, when I created this list, I realized that there was a difference between education and learning for me. And so I created another column and I wrote uncomfortable, entrepreneurial, and captivating for my learning experience. And when I sat down and I realized that these were 2 different definitions, I really thought I was onto something. And the reason being is that education in this definition is referring to schools, the way that you have interacted in education through the different type of school you may have gone through or the different peers that you may have interacted with, but it may not be exactly what you would want for your education experience. And so when I separated it from learning, I took that from the different experiences that I've had outside of education, where in my different interests, like I described earlier, whether that was activism or sports or music or writing, in spaces where I really had the freedom to be uncomfortable and listen to different perspectives and then also grow. And from that, I realized that this education definition has to change that. And so with that said, how would you describe transforming your experience? Taking those 3 words, what are 3 words you would use to describe a transformed education experience? And when you have those words, you can go ahead and speak. Go ahead.
This is kind of related to what I was trying to raise my hand and I couldn't figure out how to do it, so I missed the chance before. But the transformed words are ownership, responsibility, and energy. And it was kind of in response to my 3 about education were going to be, it finally changed around 18, which is kind of trying to capture the opposite of what learning words I chose.
Do you want to share those ones as well?
That's what I started out with, was that idea of ownership, responsibility, and like fun, energy.
Okay. Jeannie, you can go ahead.
So I would, my words in contrast to my other words would be critically conscious, self-reflective, and capacity building.
I like those words. Okay, and so with that, I really love how you said, ownership and energy. Those are the 2 kind of words that I think of in terms of transforming the way that we see things. Because when students can feel like they have ownership and that buy-in to their education, they ultimately feel that energy that fuels them to continue to interact with it in a new way. And that definition is important because it gets us to the larger question. What does it mean to be seen? How can we make that definition something for everyone, and how does everyone's own definition relate to how education needs to change? Jeannie, you can go ahead.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So what does it mean to be seen? So to be seen in education means that you first recognize that learning, the seed of learning, is first connected to who you are individually. And so to be seen in education means to be able to be represented, to have your thinking represented. I'll say it this way. It's windows and mirrors and sliding glass doors. So windows meaning I can look out and see other. Mirrors, I can look out and see me, and then I can calibrate between the 2 with a sliding glass door.
I love that. I think that it's important to be able to see yourself in education as well, and then seeing it through other people's experiences so that you know how to navigate, different spaces that you get to or different people that you meet, because it's going to be something that you interact with every single day. You're not just, well, outside of this experience that we're going through in quarantine, you're not just, spending this time just in your own learning. You're constantly looking at other people's experiences and using those to catapult your own. And so from that question, we can get to what I call the visibility definition. And I spoke with a senator for my book because I wanted to have policy in it so people could understand the kind of direction that I wanted to get through. And in research, it was really important for me to get somebody who was currently in the process of making decisions, being a legislator and having the power, to really shape the writing and policy side of education. And when we had this conversation, she said to me, and I still remember this whenever I talk about the book, schools must be driven by context rather than content. And these words are so incredibly important because they completely capture, no matter how diverse, no matter how different our answer is to that last question, what does it mean to be seen in education? It's an important context to who you are, to the experiences that you've gone through, and the experiences that you want to go through. And this is a definition that our educators, that our teachers, that our guidance counselors need to be thinking about and using every day when they interact with students of different backgrounds, because it helps students feel seen. Because when we make something particular to a student's experience, they understand the purpose of school, they want to engage with it more, and they take on this definition as their own and have that energy, like you were talking about earlier, and feel that real ownership in their education. Reason being, visibility is everything. It can turn a student who may seem bored and disengaged in class to someone who is, rapid fire, always asking questions, always being curious, always wondering, and always asking that big question, why, as opposed to not feeling an engagement with their process. Without visibility, there's a real disconnect between the way that people understand education and the way they actually interact with it. There may be students who feel like they shouldn't be doing certain things like raising their hands or asking why. They may be questioning the students who are doing that because they haven't felt seen in education. So that's a real distinction because it helps kids go from, the idea, I have this great thing that I'm thinking of and I want to share it with someone, to actually having the action because they have been seen and been given the platform to share what they have to give to the world, and the ideas that they want to help to transform this space. And the other thing is interest to growth. It doesn't always have to be an idea that spurs someone. It could be an interest. It could be a brand new thing, whether you think that you're interested in nursing maybe, but then maybe you're interested in econ or business or music. It's just the idea that students can have all these different interests and they're supported and they're given a platform for growth. With that said, I want you to answer this question, and you can write it down somewhere. You can answer this in a moment, but fill in the blank. Visibility for me in education means, it can be one word, it can be a sentence, it can be a poem if you want, but what does visibility to you mean? And how can we achieve that? That is the whole goal. I think that if you actually did write a poem, it might help you with the activity that we're going to do in a little bit, but if you just want to do one word or one sentence, that's totally okay. For me, visibility is being able to interact with my own beliefs as a Nigerian American and then relating that to my experiences that I have with people who aren't from the same background. I feel like oftentimes in my education experience, I've navigated through certain classes like world history and have gone in with so many expectations, just hearing the course title, getting really excited and inspired and spurred by the title alone, only to walk into the classroom feeling less seen than I'd walked in. And understanding the importance of world history is so important. But when I took that class as a sophomore, visibility was completely taken out of the equation. It was just, this is a 10th grade requirement. You need this to go on to the 11th grade. And it was a year that I had to learn how to hack education. And I talk about that a lot in the book. When you go through this current education system that we have right now, where you don't get the visibility and you don't get the interest that you want, you have to learn how to hack it. I don't think that the education experience that we want for kids in the future should require them hacking it. I think that it should be something where they feel titulated to, have these different ideas and to have these different experiences to a point where they are inspired, they are encouraged, they're excited to go to school, and they are feeling seen. I think that 10 years from now, maybe even 5 years from now, in the fall, if we're going to go that far, we have to think about how to make students go from, I feel seen in this class, I feel understood, I feel like my background and my identity relates to my education, and there is an importance, there is a place for me here, and I can share that with people in this class. And the title of my book, thank you, Jeannie, is Unleashing Your Innovative Genius, High School Redesigned. You can find it on Amazon, but I talk about that story a lot because it always resonates with me when I'm talking to others about how their world history experience taught them. Because in terms of my entire high school transcript, world history was the most diverse class that I thought I was going to have. Whereas when I actually went through the class, I had to learn how to hack it like an investigative journalist, that's what I say, and really treat the different characters that we were talking about in history as case studies or people of special interest so that I could really engage with the material. But that's how I had to navigate through it to understand and really fully grasp it. And now I love history. I'm completely a history buff, but it took that step of transforming the way that I saw it. And I feel like if students feel seen, it will be so much more powerful. They will not only say that they love history, but they'll be empowered to make their own. And that is the whole goal. So does anyone want to share what they filled in for this sentence? You can go ahead, Jeannie.
I said visibility for me in education means learning and honoring the essence of who I am while honoring and learning and interacting with the spirit of others.
I love that.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
This one kind of just came off the top of my head, but visibility for me looks like students feeling free enough to be able to just express their feelings and be willing to share their experiences and stuff and incorporate that into the curriculum and like what you guys are learning, like apply it to, let's say, the book you're reading or a math problem. I don't know. But and what I actually wrote was being able to see people that look like me and want to learn more about my needs and desire to grow my passion in a particular subject. I do have teachers that are like this, but again, more of it would be helpful.
Yes. There's never enough visibility in education. And I think that when we start talking about this and having a conversation, there'll be more room for teachers like that who don't look like you or who look like you or who do look like you to be able to create, that version of visibility for you that is specialized just for Maya Brown, and to able to empower other students when they see how they can help you and to see how you guys can work together to all be seen in education.
I wanted to add that visibility, the thing that came to my mind is seeing myself from different perspectives. And perhaps that's because the history I learned fit who I see myself as. You know what I mean? It's kind of the flip side in some ways, I think.
Mm-hmm. There's no wrong answer. I definitely think that visibility is different for everyone. And I think that when we start to embrace that, as opposed to only seeing one version of it, because I know right now in education it's very one-sided what it means to be seen, that's when we can really have progress. Juliana, you can go ahead.
I said that visibility for me in education means being seen and being heard by my teachers and by my peers. Being allowed not only to have my own ideas, but to express them freely.
Yes, I absolutely love that. I think ideas and being able to express them and then bringing in your peers, that is a very key part of education because it's a collaborative effort. It's not just one person trying to create this experience. It's everyone working together to make sure that everyone's being seen, that there's this equal opportunity to have your peers interact with the way that you connect with the material. And that being said, actually one of my peers that I ended up interviewing for the book, and he's not really my peer, he's 4 years older than me, but bear with me here. He's a college student. He's actually a fourth-year student at the University of Delaware. And I want to share his story of visibility with you guys so you can kind of make a deeper connection with how this relates to actually being seen in education. And so this is directly from the book, and I'm just going to read it here. His name is James Mascow. He's a fourth-year student studying at the University of Delaware and has interacted with his education through humor and curiosity. As the classic class clown making jokes as early as elementary school, he quickly became close to his fourth grade teacher. She pushed him to do things like running for class president, performing in a play, pursuing ideas that would give him more confidence. She started off as just a teacher, but then her role in his life catapulted into a mentor. This was only the beginning of James' network and his understanding of how to reach what he wanted and what he didn't know he wanted in his life. He also had a fair share of teachers who didn't believe in him. His high school microeconomics teacher told him that he couldn't major in economics and that he wouldn't do well in that field. But now, this May actually, he's going to be graduating with 2 degrees in economics and English, extensive experience in human relations, and as the co-founder of 360 VR Technology, an emerging company that uses smart technology to protect lives. And we know we definitely need that in these times. But the whole goal of James' story was that he originally was in the 4th grade as a student. He didn't see himself as somebody who could interact with his education the way he did. He was really shy, he was kind of quiet, and when his teacher, created an atmosphere where he could be seen, that created genuine connection between him, and then genuine connection between him and his peers, and the way that he started to navigate through the world. He never would have thought that he would be running for class president. He never would have thought that he would have taken that risk, to start things that he saw potential in, to actually pursue them the full way instead of going halfway. And he never would have thought that this kind of support would have helped him to feel so enamored and so empowered by the way that he interacted with the world without being seen in education. And I love telling James' story because right now, watching him now, I wouldn't even believe that the way he was in the 4th grade was how he was because of how powerful that transformation has been for him and the way that he's been able to take a 360-degree turn, if you will, at the way that he navigates the world and the way that he interacts with others. And so now I want to ask this question again. Well, this new question: what elements of your experience match this visibility definition that we were talking about? What are the things that really help you understand what it means to be visible in education based off of those words that we have on the screen there?
What was the question?
Sorry. There you go. What elements of your experience match our visibility definition? And it can be something as simple as starting a 5K with friends that you had never spoken to before, or sitting at a table with people who you didn't usually talk to, just an experience that took you out of your own context and, you know, made you feel seen by helping others. Or it doesn't have to be that. It could be someone helping you, like a mentor or a teacher or a coach. The whole point of this is that when you can identify the different elements of your education experience that have matched the definition, you'll start to see the ones that don't. And it's important to make that distinction because oftentimes the word seen can be, you know, it can be misconstrued in some ways, and it may be hard to really identify, you know, what it means to be seen. But when you start, you know, identifying what are the characteristics of being seen, that can help you create more experiences where you are seen in education. And this goes across the board, whether you're a student in high school, middle school, elementary school, you know, graduate school, whether you're out of school, you can feel seen in different aspects because as lifelong learners, we're constantly in this game of education. We're constantly in this cycle. So where are the areas, you know, where you feel seen, and how can you take those elements and replicate it in these areas of your life where you aren't being seen?
Hey, Deborah, this is Paul here. I'm not on camera, but I think something that a lot of us relate to who are not in school anymore and think about our past educational experiences, we often look at things outside of school where we felt seen versus when we were actually in school, and kind of drawing those two lines. I remember in college going up to a Calc 3 TA in a summer school course, and I asked him, why do I need this? And he just plainly said, I have no idea. And so that was like a kind of a comical moment because the course was more for engineers than economics, which was what my degree was in. So he was like, I really don't have an answer. But on the flip side of that, like knowing that some of the most powerful experiences I've had of being seen happened when I was youngest, and being on like a basketball team in 5th grade and being told I would be the captain of that team, and things like that, where coaches could kind of guide you through that process for the next 4 years. And then in high school, it's continued for another 4 years. So seeing those untestable elements like leadership and character building, I think have always been for me, regardless of the context, where I learn and grow the most, and feel seen under this kind of always shifting definition that we're talking about here.
I can definitely relate to your calc story. I'm actually a nursing major. I'll be studying nursing and public policy in the fall. And one of the requirements that we have to have is honors calculus and also physics. You have to take physics no matter what you're going into because it's a STEM-based high school. And I think across Delaware, there's like the science guidelines that you have to take biology, chemistry, and physics. And it's probably like that in other states in the country. But I thought to myself, I'm never going to need physics. I mean, it's important and I love learning, you know, how these different things work. But the idea that everyone has to take this course where I could take a different class like international relations or graphic design that I may be interested, and I have to take this requirement instead, it's saying that my interests are a complement to my experience as opposed to requirements to me understanding the world. And I think that when kids see that and they think, well, what does this math mean to me? What is its importance? It's kind of discouraging because the answer, like you said, is I don't really know. You know, there's no reason. I don't know why you have to do this. You just have to do it. And I feel like that's one way to not be seen in education when there's no real purpose for it, which I think that's why we needed to have the definition up there and to have the purpose of why we need to make the change, because when you don't know why you have to do something, it's hard to be encouraged to actually do it. And then the second question is, Do you feel a sense of agency and purpose in your education? And I think that stems from, like we just talked about, knowing the purpose of why you do things. When you feel that sense of purpose in your education, it just fuels the agency. And the agency, is just the ability to feel motivated enough to dig deeper into what the teacher didn't talk about or didn't get to cover, or dig deeper into the conversation that you and your friend might have had on insurance companies and be like, I'm interested in that. I want to learn more. And when you feel a sense of purpose and agency, it ultimately shifts the way that you interact with education, because you start to understand why being seen is so important. And the whole importance of that is in this whole question, like we keep addressing. And this is something also directly from the book, and I'll just read it. That is not to say that I didn't enjoy school. There were some days where I questioned the practical applications of complex fractions and amoebas in the real world. It's this whole real world stimulation that we keep telling kids, when you grow up, or, when you get older, we keep telling kids that. But we need to give them that purpose and agency so that they understand that they currently are in the real world. This isn't a simulation. This isn't fake. You are currently experiencing things that you're going to remember when you're older and think, wow, I was really seen in that experience. I really felt empowered and enamored in the subject that I was interacting with because I felt seen. So I think that it's so important to know the purpose and to ask students, do you actually feel this? Do you feel like is there a goal to this experience that you're having? Because once they do, it'll help them navigate how to handle different interests and different ideas that they may not have encountered before. The other important question to ask is why. I think that constantly asking why is something that we don't encourage enough in schools, and we're constantly in that, complacent sense of you have to do it just because, and you have to interact with this because I said so. And I think that when students get to asking why, they start asking why of themselves as well. Why am I interested in this? Why do I want to feel seen? Why am I not being seen? Different definitions and ideas that they start dissecting. And that's when they get to the heart and the purpose of education, which is, like we said, to have energy, to have the ownership, to really feel empowered by what they're going through, as opposed to just, checking off boxes or going through requirements just for a diploma. Another really big question of why that I actually asked myself when I was in school was, why do we say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning? And this question alone was something that was hot in school. And I definitely think in this kind of polarizing time, whenever you ask this question, it's going to bring up some contention. But the idea of being uncomfortable was not something that we often explored schools, because we didn't want to hurt people's feelings. And that was something that we always said. We were not encouraged to ask why, because at the other side of the why was having to provide an answer and a request, or a response rather, to what someone had said. And so the reason why I ask this question is because we say the Pledge of Allegiance every single day. I've said it every single day ever since I was in kindergarten. And it dawned on me, I think, when I was sitting in my classroom in the 11th grade, and I was like, why do we say the Pledge of Allegiance every single day? Like, I couldn't tell you where Utah is, but, in the pledge, it's, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. But I don't even know where all of them are. For my context, for the way that I've lived, I haven't had to know where every single state is. But as an American citizen, this is something we pride ourselves in doing every single day. And I had to ask myself, does this reflect the way that I navigate the world? Why aren't we talking about the other side of this allegiance and who this allegiance really applies to? And I think that's really important for education as well, because if there was a Pledge of Allegiance for education, it would be pledging to just having the current education I'm talking about. It would be pledging to having a one-sided view, like I said about my world history class, having a one-sided curriculum, or having to do all these requirements without having the context of why we have to do this. And I think that when we move to a Pledge of Allegiance that people can adopt and appreciate for themselves, they will just feel so much more importance and feel more seen in education. And as a Nigerian American, I love the privilege and experience that we have as Americans to talk about our rights and to talk about our freedoms and to have these conversations. But I think that when it comes down to education and being an education citizen, the playing field has not been leveled at all. And so I created a pledge for myself. Here we go. Just a second. Here's my pledge to education. And I want you guys to write a pledge in just a moment, but I'm going to read the pledge and kind of explain why I put these things in there. So I pledge allegiance to lifelong learning, to reading more books by Black authors, to starting discussions that may make some people uncomfortable, to being genuine, thoughtful, and authentic, to going outside of my comfort zone, to understanding and advocating for cultures that are not my own, to allowing my interests to change and take different shapes, to being a contributor rather than a consumer, to always asking why, and to discovering new things in myself and in others every single day. And it took me a while to come up with this pledge, because I had to think about the different aspects of my education that I wanted to change and different things that I hadn't seen represented. I think in my AP Lang classroom, we were talking about how important it is to have different voices, to have different stories. And I was always asking myself, why aren't we reading more books by Asian American authors? Why aren't we reading books by more Native American authors and only talking about the historical aspects of what happened instead of the cultural relevance of how, what happened back then with the Trail of Tears and everything, how that affects Native Americans today and how they navigate the world. Why aren't those conversations that we're having in a classroom about different stories and sharing? Why are we only focusing on a single story instead of, igniting people to have different views and to actually embrace the way that different people have grown up? And this pledge, I'm going to commit to saying it 3 times a day, and I'm going to ask you guys to write your own pledge. But the whole goal of it is to create actionable things inside of your pledge that you're going to do every single day. What I realized from the Pledge of Allegiance was that it wasn't clear in it for me to say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to having uncomfortable conversations, to talking about my political beliefs, to advocating for the things that I feel are important to me, and to hearing the other side of the argument. That is not in the Pledge of Allegiance. But in your pledge, I want you to be so much more particular and so much more on the nose about what you want to pledge to, so that walking out of this webinar, you have the ideas and the action steps that you want to take in order to transform education, not only for yourself, but for others, to make sure that this visibility definition that we were talking about earlier applies to everyone and not just yourself. So if anyone wants to share their visibility definition in the chat, not your visibility definition, your pledge, you can go ahead and share that. But I do want to leave some time for some questions before we continue this forward. So if anyone wants to share their pledge in the chat, you can feel free to do so. And also, highlight a promise to yourself. Are you going to say it 5 times a week? Are you going to say it every single day? Are you going to say it once a day, once a week, once a month? How long are you going to, discuss this, and how are you going to use this in your everyday life now after creating it? Because the whole goal isn't for it to just become, an obsolete piece of paper that you'll just leave on a desk or just leave in a notebook. It has to be something that you are continuously seeing every single day, something that you're reflecting and ruminating on, so that when it comes time to the fall, or when it comes time to the next opportunity that you have to really have a voice in this space, you have all the things that you want to see changed, and you're actively doing that.
Because I know that she's not doing as much on the computer, so I just thought that would be fun. And like Eloise,
The other 3 other truly important ideas that I'd love for you to have in your pledges are something along the lines of something where you can create a space for others, you can celebrate new ideas, and then welcome diverse forms of thinking. That is ultimately the meaning and the goal of creating learning that looks like you, your friends, your classmates, your teachers, your community. It's making sure that these 3 things are incorporated in the way that we all navigate this space and how we want to, empower people. I see your pledge, Paul. I pledge allegiance to knowing myself as deeply as possible within the context of each new opportunity I envelop myself inside of. I love that. It doesn't have to be, a whole thing. It can just be a couple of lines. And I think the important thing about your pledge also is allowing it to change. I added a few things to the Pledge of Allegiance, not in a disrespectful way, but to kind of expand the things that I wish were in the Pledge of Allegiance, so that students understood that this was, when we were pledging to this, it's an importance that as citizens, we can talk about different ideas, we can have conversations, and we can learn how to make others feel seen, so that everyone feels like they have a space and a platform to be represented. And so if you find places in your pledge 5 days from now, or a year from now, or even 10 years from now that you want to shift, most definitely you probably will. But you can continue to mold and shape it to the pledge that you want, until at the end of the day, you have something that you are committed to, that you are constantly pledging to, and that you actually take action on in every single part of your day. Like people keep saying, and I think that we have to make a distinction now in terms of the quarantine and COVID-19 and the situation of the world. The kind of learning that we're going through right now is kind of like emergency response learning. It's not entirely just online learning. It's online learning in response to something that is currently happening in the background. But education has never been more timely for a change like this. I think that parents are seeing this, teachers are seeing this, educators are seeing this, lawmakers are seeing this. They're seeing places where education that is online doesn't work, for communities that don't have access to the internet or don't have, or in Wi-Fi dead zones, as they call them, or don't have, computers and the opportunity to actually have a stable connection. We're seeing that education needs to be changed and needs to be shaped around people's individual experiences instead of this overarching idea or this one-sided view that everybody has the exact same experience, because that's not seeing people. That's just trying to mask a problem that is there. And I think that whether we like it or not, this has really, really exposed ways that we can make changes and things that definitely need to go when it comes time to the fall. And with your pledge, you can also choose to ask your lawmakers, what is your pledge to transforming education? How are you going to take a step forward to making sure that I feel seen, that my cousins feel seen, that my neighbor feels seen, that my friend across the country feels seen in every aspect of their education? And how will you help them get there? How will you use your power of being a legislator and being able to co-sponsor bills and to write different bills that can empower people in their experience as citizens? How will you use that to encourage American education to move forward, and then also encourage the global education as a whole to be more inclusive of the different voices and to help people be seen? That being said, that is the end of my webinar. If you have any questions, this is now the time for Q&A. If you wanted to share a pledge and didn't get the opportunity, now would be a really good time. And I'd love to hear any insights or ideas that you had from this webinar.
I just want to say you did a great job.
Thank you.
It's Deborah, right?
Yes.
Okay, Deborah. And I just recently started reading a book called Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Lose. I mean, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And it's talking about how, like, when you think something's a loss, you're actually like learning from it, and to start thinking like that. And so I feel like this week I just been getting really motivated. And then when I joined this call and the entire panel thing that happened before this, I just am getting more knowledge and more opportunity that I didn't have during school, because I just was going through the motions and trying to get my grades and stuff. But like you said, or like somebody in the panel mentioned before, they said that students are able to just get photocopies of basically the homework and stuff that teachers assign, and then they can just turn it in. But when you actually do reflective stuff like this, like, it caused you to think, which I wasn't really doing before.
Well, I'm so glad that you got the opportunity to think, and I definitely agree with that. Especially with online learning, I've seen ways in my classrooms and seeing different group chats form for my classmates where they're FaceTiming during the class, and I'm just like, when you have online learning and you're not focusing on actually getting people invested in it and you're only doing assessments, that completely takes away from the opportunity that you now have where people are in the comfort of their homes to be more vulnerable than they would have in the classroom and to share their thoughts and ideas about what's going on in the class, as opposed to just filling in assignments and just getting the attendance sheet filled in. It's not about that. Education can't be about that anymore because of the ways that we are changing and the way that our minds think so differently.
Mm-hmm. It's also giving me more access to, like, just talk to my to talk to my superintendent and, like, the head people, because after this I'm going to send them an email, because I've been, like, thinking about it, but I just want to tell them about all that I've been learning about education, like working with Delaware Can and stuff, because I was on their panel where students are talking about their experiences, and then the News Journal emailed me and said that they wanted to quote me and stuff.
That's fantastic. I think you should be really happy about that. And I think that's a really good opportunity for you to share your voice while also, like we said, lifting while you climb. You're definitely going to be offering a valuable perspective, and I'm really happy that you got that opportunity.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? It can be about the presentation, about me, about education, about other ways you think that we can move forward that may not have been addressed in the panel or this presentation.
How would you recommend like asking our teacher a question? Like if you're trying to get them to maybe change their the way they teach or something, or like give suggestions, like what would an email look like? Because I'm trying to figure it out.
An email specifically, or
Yeah, email specifically, because that's all I can mostly do right now.
if you could get a phone call, that would be nice, because I feel like people have a harder time saying no over the phone. But if it is an email, if it is an email, then I would try to articulate exactly the kind of change that you want to see, or the kind of adjustment that you want to make, so that they have an idea of how they can move forward with it. And even if it's not the entire thing, they can maybe do pieces of it at a time, but try to make it as clear as possible so they understand, that this is something that you really want, and these are the ways that you want to see it done.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
What, how do we, I don't know, encourage people to use their voices? Like, I know you've told your story, and now I'm wondering, like, as you think about the systems change, what's on your mind for how that can happen?
So usually, I think the reason why people aren't using their voices is because they don't know where the problem is. And I think that when we put them in a situation where they can see that, it helps them feel motivated to do it. But even then, if they aren't, I try to make it as personal as possible. I say, what keeps you up at night? What wakes you up in the morning? Are you studying that in school? And oftentimes the answer to that question is no, but I would love to. And so when I quiz them with that, when I ask them that question, I'm like, well, why aren't you studying that in class? How can you start studying that in class? How can you get your teachers to start understanding the things that really wake you up and get you excited about this life that we're, so privileged to live? And I think that when they start thinking about that, when they think about that question alone, what wakes you up, it's a question that the answer changes every single time. And so I think that's one way to really help people spur them into being kind of like an education activist, and then helping them stay motivated through that, because you wake up every morning. That is the joy, that is the hope, that is the opportunity, and you're constantly waking up to the excitement or whatever stimulates you to continue about your day and to feel purpose in this life. If there are no more questions, this is how you can contact me. This is how you can reach me. I have a website, an Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. However is best for you to communicate with me, this is how you can. And then, of course, you can buy my book. It's actually 10% off right now on Amazon. And I'd love to hear what you think of it. I might be starting a book club in the next month or so if we're still in quarantine. But I think that would be a really good way for people to have that answer to the question of how do I stay motivated, by talking about things like education reform and being able to, have the conversation with me as well of how I've done that and how I can help them do the same.
I have a question. Were you always like this motivated to do this? Like what was your spark to start doing education work? Because for me it was Teen Sharp. What about you?
So this is actually in my keynote speech, I talk about this a lot, but I was going through education in the 10th grade, kind of, like you said, through the motions. And I had a teacher, AP, and that was regular biology. And the teacher was giving us pop quizzes every single day. It wasn't really an engaging learning environment. And there was one quiz, I distinctly remember this. And I also wrote my comment out about this. I got I think it was a 65. I failed the quiz regardless. And that quiz was a wake-up call. And even though it didn't have that much weight on my grade, I was just thinking to myself, biology is the study of life. And in this class, I don't feel like I'm alive. I'm just sitting here, I'm absorbing information. It's kind of just hitting me. And the teacher never asked us what our perspectives are or how we want to explore, or why we can't talk about, the ethics of biology and research and whatnot, things that I was really interested in, we weren't talking about. And then I started to have a conversation with my peers to make sure that, I wasn't going crazy, that this wasn't just me complaining about a teacher or me complaining about an experience. And that was when I started to realize that not only in my high school, but all across the country, nobody is satisfied with this experience. And we're kind of just going through it to get by, to get that diploma so that we can actually do the things that we want to learn. And I'm like, we're losing out on a real like wealth of potential here in high school, which is why the way that I talk about in the book to the reader, it's directed as a person, as a high school student, because there's so much we can get out of these 4 years that is wasted by these these frivolous things. Like they only give us agency in organizing the prom or organizing a pep rally, but we can do so much more. People talk about 14 to 18-year-olds and they're like, what can they really do? And I'm like, you will be surprised how empowered kids can be when you just give them the opportunity and the ownership to actually feel excited about education and to feel more purpose in planning things and actually getting a say in the things that are organized and in our curriculum and what we're studying and how we're interested in the way that school works beyond how our prom is going to go, beyond how homecoming is going to look. We're so much more than teenagers who like social media and dancing, and I really want education to see that, and that's the reason why I got so motivated about this. But I was beforehand going through the motions in the 10th grade, just trying to do the best that I could be and kind of competing with everyone. I was also in that competitive mindset that I had to constantly beat someone out. And when I got out of that, when I realized that education isn't about competition, it's about empowerment, that was when I really realized, my purpose and my goal in education was to help others realize that, so that they're not just, going through this endless competition of life to be better than someone else, when they can lift while you climb, like I kept saying, and really feel inspired and enamored by their classmates as opposed to seeing them as competitors.
That is so good. I am totally, like, I just wrote that down because I got to think about that, because all the kids, like, at my school want to do biotech because they just say, I want to get money when I get older and stuff. And they might not even actually be passionate about it, and they don't join the global pathway, which I'm a part of, where we learn about global leadership and stuff like that. It can be applied to anything, but they're just so focused on getting the bag,
Mm-hmm.
And
And money is important, but you'll find that if you're just focused on money and there's no passion, you're going to burn out, or you're not going to be satisfied. And I was actually watching a video the other day that inspired me to to create my own bucket list. It's when you accept the idea that one day, when you accept your own mortality, that's what the video was about. When you accept your own mortality, that one day you are going to die, and if you are not living up to the potential that you can right now, then the person that you are, however many years it is, or when you're 70, 80, whenever you're going to die, if that person isn't satisfied with the life that you are living or the life that you decide to live, it'll be a real shame, because there'll be so many missed out opportunities. There'll be so many missed out connections that you could have made to make the world a different place for the babies that are constantly born every single day. I don't know what the rate is for how many children are born in a minute or a second, but those are new people coming into the world. And if you aren't making a conscious effort to make sure that your time on earth is important and it's intentional, then what's the purpose?
yes.
Thank you for these questions. They're amazing.
So does this ends at 5, right? Because I don't want to ask too many questions. Because like I
I'm
have.
not asking too many questions. It does end at 5 though. You can go ahead.
Okay. So when you're trying to motivate your peers, because sometimes when I try and talk to my classmates about anything that I'm learning, they tend to just want to do Netflix and just the regular basic teen things or whatever. And so when I try and bring this up, I just sound like an alien or something. So how do you make it applicable to your peers and make them want to get passionate about same type of stuff?
I think it's interesting how you use the word alien, because that's definitely how people see, the kind of education that we're talking about, transforming it. They see it as radical. But like I said, when you make things personal to kids and you ask them, you're watching, all these shows every single day, but have you ever thought of actually writing your own, making your own show or starring in your own show? Has that thought ever crossed your mind? And if it hasn't, what is something that you would want other people to spend their time watching? Like, what would you want your contribution to be? And I think when they get into that kind of thinking, when they think, I can spend my day doing things other than TikTok or watching Netflix, and you can still do those things, but if they're a majority of your day, then I feel like it kind of loses the purpose of this time that we have now, to be more reflective and to be more purposeful, and to maybe that's journaling every single day. They could start with that. If it's not writing a film, you could just start by journaling and connecting with your thoughts. I think that one of the best ways to get your peers more motivated is to ask them, how are you being self-aware? Like, do you reflect on your actions? Do you reflect on the 8 hours of television that you just watched, or The Scandal, or Tiger King, like everyone's watching? Are you reflecting on your experiences, and how are they helping you for the next day? Tell them to just encourage them to take it day by day. It isn't going to be a transformation just like that. It definitely takes time to fully understand why this is important. But I think journaling is a really great way to start, and having conversations with other people. So you're expanding the way that you think and having a perspective that is more than just your own.
Thanks for that. I'm gonna
Of
use those
course.
tips.
And if they don't want to journal, they could send a long text. That's what people usually do these days. I mean, I would definitely encourage writing your thoughts down instead, but some people prefer to, type. And if that's just you, then that's totally okay too.
Yeah, sometimes when I don't feel like getting my journal or something, I'll just use the voice memo thing on my phone and then just make a recording, like especially if I'm sad. And then when I go back and listen to it, it's so funny because I'll be like, like in that in that crying tone, and it's so corny.
No, but that's another good way. If you can't write your thoughts down, not everybody is a writer, you can definitely voice them instead. Even writers use that, for motivation. If you can't think of something to do, just talk about it. Just talk out loud, and you'll find yourself thinking of more ideas than if you would
Yeah.
just you stare at an empty piece of paper.
They actually, my counselor told us to do that for like college applications, because a lot of the prompts and stuff, they'll ask these big reflective like questions, and then when you talk about it, it actually helps.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can't remember how many drafts I wrote before I finally got to the essay that I ended up submitting.
Oh wow, I bet you read a lot.
I did.
Okay, well, I'm gonna try and get back to my schoolwork now, but thanks for the call,
Of
and thanks
course.
for inviting
And
me.
yeah, it's 5 now, so if you guys can, thank you so much for joining this call. You can always reach out to me from, the social media, on my website. There's a place where you can email me directly. And I'm really thankful for your time. Thank you so much for choosing to tune into this session. And I hope that you have a great day and that you continue to say your pledges every single day. So yeah, have a great day.